I should. I'd be better if I thought I could. I'm a sucker for adrenaline, every villain is. Everybody trying to change my ways, but I live just to see you break. I'm a sucker for adrenaline, every villain is. You take the high road, I'll take the low. Everyone lies cause everyone knows. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Oh, a little bit bad. Feels good to be a little bit bad. I'll admit I'm a little bit wicked. I belong in the grave I'm digging. I live like a villain lives. I come alive when I lose control. Everyone lies just to ease their soul. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Oh. Just afraid to show our colors. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad. Oh.
I belong to you.
I belong to you.
Do just what you want. You're the one I trust, and I always be around when I need some loving, baby. No one else.
Yeah. Let you down. Sing all my melodies.
I'm standing outside waiting for you. You were always taking time, baby, playing it through.
Yo, what's up? Oh, that was a weak yo, Patrick.
I know, my nose, man. It's my nose. It's the nose.
Patrick's got the sniffles. It's not corona. It's not corona. It's
No.
probably just allergies. Allergies.
You've experienced the allergies. You've experienced
Man, allergies get. I had that earlier, like on Thursday. It was bad. It was bad. It was
them. It
bad.
doesn't stop. It's not
Nope,
stopping me.
nope.
It's not stopping me.
All right, welcome everyone. I am your host, and Patrick is your host. So Adam and Patrick here, Guy in a Cube. We are finally live. Sorry about the faux pas this morning. I thought I had it scheduled right. Apparently I didn't. So, how you doing, Patrick?
We all make mistakes. I'm good.
Yeah,
man. I'm
outside
good.
of being
besides
sniffles. Yeah.
sneezy, right? Sneezy Smurf. Besides
All right,
sneezing
all right.
a million times this morning, I'm all right.
Nice. So we are going to just hang out today and answer some questions about Power BI and or whatever. And I'm going to put something in the chat. So just remember, put a Q colon in front of your question. We'll get it queued up, and then we will rock and roll. So a couple housekeeping things right out of the gate. First off, we get this question a lot, or I get this question a lot. And so I wanted to just share with you the stream setup that I've got. So all the gear that we use to make this stream happen and to make it look like it looks. So my setup is absolutely more complex than Patrick's.
Bananas.
I've got a link there. If you go to Guy in a Cube, guyinaq.be/stream setup, I've got these diagrams there. And then that is available for you. And then Patrick's setup, like I said, it's a little less complex.
It's a little baby.
But
setup.
it is still awesome. So
Yeah.
so good stuff. All right. Also, thank you so much. If you are a member of Guy in a Cube, it is much appreciated. We love having you as part of helping us on this journey that is Guy in a Cube. And thank you for Joseph Blake becoming a new supporter, and then Rodrigo Argumendo as well. Thank you for becoming a new supporter. So you can hit that little join button down next to the subscribe button if you would like. And there lists out different perks that are part of that. So thank you for that. So hopefully that works. Awesome. All right. I think that is everything. So oops. Get some we've got some stuff coming in already. That is good. So lots of people. VJ, thank you for becoming a supporter. Much appreciated. So seeing lots of folks in there. I see Jessica in there, alt enter. Good to see you. Thomas, good to see you.
Jessica.
Lots of people from around the world. Sadakar from Dubai. I got Tomas from Lithuania. Yost is in the crowd. So Yost, he's from Denmark. But he started doing these Power BI quizzes, and I partook in that quiz earlier this week. I'll put a link to that video in the chat. Definitely go check it out. We did a little quiz on gateways. So some people said they were tough questions. So they were not
I failed
softballs.
miserably.
Patrick did not do so well.
Miserably.
Yeah. So
Did
it's
not
all
do
it's
so
all
well. It was
good. It's
tricky.
all good.
It was tricky.
All right. So we do let's see. So we've got a couple. So one of the perks of some of the higher member tiers is you can send in questions beforehand, and we will prep that. And so we got two this time. And so the first one we're going to go with is from Jessica Jolly. And so her question, it's a little involved. Essentially, the question here is, what do we do if we've got multiple dates and we've only got one date table? How do we handle that? And so, the question there is, do we just add another date table? Do we have relationships and we switch in between inactive and active? What's any performance things there? So So Patrick, I think you've got something ready to show there. So we'll
Yeah,
put
but
over.
before we show, so
Okay. All right.
I read this. We had our little before we go live break there, and unfortunately, that gave me time to think.
Okay. All right.
And so it depends on the question that you're trying to answer, though. First, before we get into this, it depends on, are you just trying to display something for each one of the dates, right? And or if you're trying to correlate the values, then that's going to be something different. And so we'll walk through these different scenarios. So instead of all this talking, let's do what, Adam?
Let's head over to your laptop, buddy.
Let's head over to my laptop.
All right.
And so I have a model here that we created, and you guys know I'm in love with the model view. It's my sweet mistress. And I created just a simple little model here where I have the internet sales table and a calendar table. In my internet sales table, I have multiple dates. And so I have the ship date, the order date, and there's some other dates. But right now, we're just going to talk about the order date and the ship date. So how would you handle this, And so what I could do, if the question was, hey, I just want to see, how many things were ordered on one date and how many things were shipped on one date, Jessica, I could easily just say modeling new table and then just make a ship date calendar. So we do ship calendar and just make it equal to my calendar, right? You can do lots of other things. We can, just for the sake of brevity, we'll just do this, right? And then I'll go back over to that model view, and I'll get my ship calendar, and I'll drop it here, and then I'll create another relationship. And I think that was part of her question was, do we have multiple active relationships? And I'm noticing that that this actually went to bidirectional here. So I'm going to fix this. And so
that's because you did the relationship between the two calendar tables.
Did I?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to do that.
That's not what I want to do.
No, that was
so sorry.
That was horrible.
So sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that, Adam. Thank you. And so we'll go to ship
I was
date.
trying to figure that out.
So
I'm like, why are you doing a relationship between calendar
So sorry.
tables?
Yeah, that's not what I meant to do.
All good.
And so I was wondering why. So there we go. Right. So we have these two. And then what I can do is, right, I can come over here and I can create a new bar chart. This same guy right here. So what is this technically called? This is called a cluster column chart. So we'll create a new custom column chart. And then we can, build it out the exact same way.
So real quick, Wyatt in the chat said that's bananas. I don't know if he's referring to the relationship on between the two date tables. I don't know. Please continue.
Let's blame it on the sneezes. Let's blame it on the sneezes.
All right.
And so she did ask a question about, can I have two date tables? So you totally can have two. So
can you mark two different tables as date tables? Yes.
Yeah.
Answer
so
is
I'm going to
yes.
go here and choose it. And the reason, and what made me immediately notice that this wasn't marked is I see that little calendar right there. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And then what you'll see is going to happen is as soon as I mark it as a date table, it gets rid of it. Right. And then I'll drag my month over to the axis, and then I can drag total sales over to the axis here, because I love my folders in my view here. Here we go. And then the challenge, though, Adam, right here is that now I have two calendar tables. Do I really want this year filtering this cluster column chart? No, I don't.
Of course I do.
Because I want to use no. Okay. Because I want this year, this guy right here, filtering it, and it's set for some default summarization. And I know I didn't have to do that, but that's just how I'm built. That's wired into my DNA. And so I'll go ahead and copy this because I'm not lazy, just really efficient. And I'm going to take the year from here and drop it over there and get rid of this one. And so now, right, I have these two, but they're both gonna filter. It's crazy, right? Because now you see what's happening.
Cross filter each other, and it gets nuts.
Right. And so I got to go to format, and then I need to do edit interactions and get rid of all this stuff. But that's not even a big problem. What if I wanted to see both of those measures on the exact same graph? I can't really do that in an efficient way besides changing the color and then dragging it on top, right? That's going to really make it nice.
Oh, that looks beautiful.
And so that's why at the beginning I said it depends on the question you're trying to answer. If you're okay with setting edit interactions and figuring all this stuff out, and dealing with multiple tables, maybe this is the solution that you want. I won't recommend this, but if this is the question that you're trying to answer, maybe there's some more processing. If you do it in Power Query and create another calendar table in Power Query, you got some more processing that's going to happen. You got to manage more relationships. You got to look at this field list. Now I have 2 calendar tables. That's not something that I want to deal with. So what I would do instead, Adam, what I would do is completely delete this. I don't want that. I just don't want that. I'm not happy about it. And I'm going to delete all this.
Oh, now
and
you're
I almost said, yep, I almost used a little profanity, but it's okay. All right. So what I would do is, and I think she even said this in her message, or should we just use active relationships and inactive relationships? And she's absolutely correct. Jessica, you're absolutely correct. What I would do is grab my date and find ship date and drop it over here, and then I would have an inactive relationship. But what I would do is now everything's based on this central calendar, and then I would come over to my measures here, and I'm not going to tell you what I call this measure, this function every time I use it. I'm sure Adam will bring it up, but that's okay. Come on, what is this? You see this drop? You see that thing right there? What is that?
I think it's a bug with your video driver. Just ignore it.
I can't
Continue.
do anything. It's completely stuck.
It's
completely stuck.
Broke desktop.
I broke Power BI desktop.
Kill it.
It's complete.
It come back. And task.
I think it came back.
It crashed.
It killed itself, and so it'll come back. And so what I'm gonna do? It's all right. I'll create a measure. Hey, it's live demos, man. Live demos.
That's it.
So I'll create a measure. Total. I'll call it ship orders or ship total sales, and then I'll say calculate the total sum, and then I'll force it to use that inactive relationship. And that's what she was saying in her I think she said that in her message. And so as a best practice, it's in multidimensional models, we have the concept of role-playing dimensions. Unfortunately, we don't have role-playing dimensions in tabular models, but you can simulate it through the active relationships, through the inactive relationships, with a combination of inactive relationships and a use relationship function. What did I use? A user relationship. No, it's not called.
Yeah, you used to say user relationship. It's just use relationship.
So we'll go here and do new measure, and see, I told you it'll work out, right?
Michael said you're running out of RAM.
Probably.
He's on his itty bitty machine.
I am. I'm gonna buy a new one though. I am.
Yeah.
I am. My birthday's coming up, so I think I made a decision to buy myself a new machine here, and so here we go. And so I want to zoom in a little bit on this, Adam. There we go. And so we'll call this shipped total sales. And it's really simple, right? Calculate total sales amount. Right there, and then use relationship, and then we'll force it to use the relationship we want: calendar, date, and then internet sales, ship date. I hate alphabetical order. And bam, and now we can use that. And now I don't have a second table to manage. If I made, if you made this, if you exposed this data set to your end users, then they would have to, if you went the multiple calendar route, it's likely they'd be really confused because you got multiple calendar tables that they have to deal with. But now it's just a single calendar table. And then I can click on my bar chart, and then I can add this over to my my bar chart. And now I use this single date table.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful. It's lovely. I'm getting all warm and tingly inside,
right.
by putting that.
But it does go back to your point of what's the question you're trying to answer, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So Scott had an interesting item comment below saying, like, look, you may want to answer the question, how many items ordered in January shipped in February?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that either needs 2 date tables, or in my opinion, better is calc number of days ordered to ship. So yeah,
He's
there's
right.
lots of different
He's
ways
right.
to solve it.
Yeah. It depends on, like he said, what's the question we're trying to answer. So
Right.
the only thing that scares me about having multiple date tables, if I expose this data model to, report consumers, someone that's not like us, hardcore data modelers, then they can get confused. They can get confused quickly. So you really need to do some upfront training and some really good naming of those tables and things like that. So
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So let's see here. Very good, Patrick. Very good, Patrick. All right. So the second question that was sent in from a member was from my buddy Micah. So let's go ahead and he sent in a video question. So this is fun. All right, you ready, Patrick?
That's nice. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yo, what up, Adam, Patrick? My name is Micah Dale. I'm a really big fan of y'all's. So my question is about Tabular Editor. It's a great tool. I love it. I love using it. And recently I've been seeing some videos circulating online of people using it directly connected to Power BI Desktop. So my question is, when can scrubs like me get access to this feature? When do you see it becoming generally available? And how excited are you guys for this feature? Anyways, thanks for taking the question, and I really appreciate y'all's channel and the work you do, and keep up the great work.
Nice.
Awesome.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Man. That was awesome.
Appreciate that, Micah. Yep. So I will tell you, and I'm pretty sure Patrick's the same way, that we are both, we get really excited when we use like Dex Studio or Tabular Editor. Like they're great tools. And so Patrick, you were going to show something with Tabular Editor there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Christian showed this at MBAS, and I was like, oh my, I can't wait. Please, can I have this, right? Can I get this? Because honestly, building all my measures, and I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to be honest. All my measures, anything that I do besides like data prep, because I got to use a query editor for that. But when it comes to writing my DAX code and stuff like that, I do it all with DAX Studio and Tabular Editor. I really, really do. And so when Christian showed this, it was, I don't know, my heart started beating really fast. It's like I was meeting a girl for the first time. And so,
all right.
And so, going out on that first date. And so you open up Power BI Desktop. Make sure you have Power BI Desktop open. And there's an option, Adam, that we didn't talk about, but you need to go out and go into options and settings.
Yeah, there's a preview feature right now for the enhanced metadata. So that's not technically required to connect Tabular Editor to it, but if you're going to be using Tabular Editor, especially down the line, you're going to want that enhanced metadata format preview feature. A couple things to note with that preview feature is once you check that and you've saved your Power BI desktop file, you cannot revert. So you are done. Yeah. And I did see there are potential. There was some issue I saw that came up with it checked. Just know
we
what?
Oh, there was something that we did. Miguel and I ran into. I'll think about it. But go ahead.
Yeah. So just know that make sure you're testing and make sure you have a backup of the old one before, So
okay,
just be careful.
And so once you open, if you don't have Tabular Editor, it's really easy to go get it. Just go to SQLBI.com tools, and you can download the Tabular Editor. And then once you have it open, make sure your Power BI desktop is open, just like DAX Studio. It's just like DAX Studio. Click Open from DB, and then you'll see right here it says Local Instance.
Yep.
Click that drop down, and any of your PBIX files that are open, you can you'll be able to connect to them. Something really cool though, you see this right here. It gives you that diagnostic port, so you can use other tools. So if you open this up, you get the diagnostic port, and you can use Management Studio or a profile or other tools to connect to the model.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and choose it and click OK. And now there's all of my metadata, right? Or everything is there. And Adam, you were talking about translations the other day. But there's look, my parameter from my because my query editor depends on this parameter. So there's some expressions there. Here's my tables. There's my calendar table. Notice it has the time because I marked it as a date table. It's nice. It's really nice. And so what Christian showed in his video, it just took me to a place, my happy place, my shower. It took me back to my shower. I remember where it took me to. And basically you can see here's my folders with my measures, and I can create a new measure. Watch this, Adam. I'm going to say new.
All right, here we go.
Measure, right? New measure. I'm going to call it Patrick. There we go. There's my measure name. And Patrick is, guess what? Number 1, right? And then look at there. You see right there. You see this? You see this display folder? You see that, right?
I do see that.
Watch this. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click the ellipsis. And now what I can do, check it out. So you see these are the display folders that I created in the model view. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say make new folder. I'm going to call this live stream. Yep, because that's where I want to keep this, but that's not actually where I wanted to put it, but that's okay, right? And I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to click save. I'm going to save this.
So now, before you do that, I got to caution folks.
Yeah?
What Patrick's doing right now, saving back in the Power BI desktop, that is not supported today.
So,
so please don't do that on a production one, because there may be some adverse effects.
There is a problem. So during our little break, so once I do this, it was hilarious. Once you do this, and then you go back to the desktop, right? I'll go back to the desktop, and I'm just going to refresh the table, right? This table right here. I'm going to refresh this. In Christian's at Embase, when he clicked save, it automatically did it for you. And
I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay, all right. So I click refresh here, and once I click refresh, but I have to tell you what happened. So I click refresh. It's got to go get all my data. Then it's going to redo the model and read all the schema back in, right? And so you'll see here comes my live stream folder. You see it, and there's the measure that I created. And so then I went back to the tablet editor. And this is why you don't want to do this today, right? I just wanted to show you because his video was so great, and I was inspired by him sending the video question in. And so if you go back to the tablet editor and delete this folder and the measure that you created, and then close the PPIX file, open the PPIX file back, it's still there. And then if you try to delete it there, you get an object not referenced. So don't do this. Don't use it. But we're working on it. It's getting there. It's getting there, right? They're working on it.
Yeah. So what
cool,
what Christian showed at Embase, they showed that there's going to be some external tool extensions for Power BI Desktop, which will allow you to launch into like DAX Studio, the ALM Toolkit, Tabular Editor. So that's something that's coming down the road. And I believe once that comes out, and what he showed is as part of that capability, you'll be able to write back into the Power BI Desktop file. So you could do all your editing in Tabular Editor, write it back to Power BI Desktop, and then the interface for Power BI Desktop will just pick that up. So that's coming down the line. That's not there today. So something to be excited about coming down the line. So that's bananas.
Just be really careful. When you start doing this stuff, make a copy. This is a copy of a copy of a copy. So
save early, save often.
Be very careful.
Yes.
It's good though. Good stuff though.
No, that was good. So a couple things here. So Micah actually, Micah's in the chat. He's here.
Oh, he's in the chat.
So he said he's been able to connect to Tabular Editor, but he had issues with pushing calculation groups from Tabular Editor. Yes, that is true.
Yes.
So today that's not going to be a good option against Power BI Desktop. So now the other thing you can do though is you can use the Tabular Editor against the XMLA endpoint on Power BI Premium, because now we have read-write capabilities there, and you could push it that way. But you're not going to be able to do it directly in Power BI Desktop yet. So once those new enhancements that Christian was showing in the Embase demo, once that's been released, then hopefully all of that should work just fine. So, because that's actually what he was showing too. He was showing calculation groups and whatnot in there as well. So, absolutely.
It's awesome. It is really nice though. It's really nice.
And then Micah, thanks for the super chat also. Much appreciated, buddy. So glad that was a great question. So, all right. And then
so keeps the questions like, they send the questions ahead of time. It gives us time to prepare so we can answer it better. So
go a little bit more in depth.
If you want your question, go ahead.
So
sorry.
awesome. All right. So of note, Matthew is in there as well, and he had a good comment for you. I just wanted to bring that forward.
What did he say? What did he
So he
say?
said, I knew,
Is
as Mrs. Patrick storms into the room, I knew I would find you here with Tabular Editor again. Yeah.
She's my sweet mistress.
Oh, Wyatt, thanks for the super emote. Much appreciated, buddy.
I love Matthew.
Yeah. And then, Jedi was also in there, and he said that I've only been watching 5 minutes in and already learned something new. So that's awesome.
Oof.
Damn.
That's awesome.
Damn.
That's awesome.
All right. So, those were all of the items that we had there. So next question. Thomas had a question. Why is there 2 gateways, Azure Integration Runtime and the Power BI Gateway? Actually, if you go watch the quiz, the gateway quiz that I did over on Yost's channel, I actually talked about that a little bit. That was one of the questions that came up. I was like, what was the original name of the gateway? And then explained the reason, like what kind of happened, because it started with one team, the team that actually owned SQL Server Integration Studio and like Azure Data Factory. And so that was the team that originally created the gateway for Power BI, but then we ended up taking it in-house, and then that team separated to the data integration team. There's history there, but effectively there are 2 different gateways because one supports Power BI and the Power Platform, and the other one supports things like Azure Data Factory and things of that nature. So 2 different teams at Microsoft doing that, so that's why there are more than one. So awesome. Let's see here. All right. So Devashish says, what is the recommended architecture for taking advantage of SAP HANA Live data without compromising on performance? SAP HANA, there's kind of 2 modes for SAP HANA. So you can have relational, so SQL relational, or you can have the multidimensional mode. Multidimensional mode is going to be way faster than SQL relational when you're doing that. So the catch there, though, is that if you do the multidimensional route, you can only take advantage of one calc view on the SAP HANA side, right? So whereas in SQL relational, you can bring in all sorts of stuff, right? So those are kind of the trade-offs of the 2. If you want to use something like single sign-on as well, you've got to use the multidimensional route. So there's things like, so if you want to take advantage of the SSO piece and whatnot, that's something to consider as well. In terms of the SQL relational, like enhancements to that, I'm not aware of any thing coming on that front, but definitely go to ideas.powerbi.com, vote up items. I'm sure there's things out there for that. So good question. All right, so Kevin, going back to the stream setup, can find a Go XLR anywhere. I'm pretty sure he meant can't help a cuber out. Yes, so a lot of the equipment that we have, so like the HD60S on Patrick's end, any of the like Stream Decks and Go XLRs, it's in short supply right now because everyone is trying to get into the stream game, and so good luck.
Fortunately, we ordered all this stuff before.
Most of it. We got your new HD60S because we got rid of the cam link.
Yeah.
Patrick was using the Elgato cam link. Don't use that. Don't use it.
Yeah, don't use it.
It's been nothing but trouble for us.
And if you have a docking station, don't plug both of those devices. What are these Elgato devices into that docking station? Try to plug them directly into your streaming PC because I was recording the video yesterday based on the file that I was sharing, and my voice went like I was talking normally, then it went. So don't do that. Don't do that. Adam may show you guys a clip of the video. I sent it to him. So
yeah. Stay tuned to Wednesday's video.
Yeah. Oh God.
All right. Here we go. Let's go back. Whoa. So many. Get rid of this. That. Right. So VJ had a question. I follow the measure tables to park them separately instead of keeping them in regular query tables. but I heard from some experts that it may cause problems. Have you seen such issues? So the idea of measure tables, if you're just doing everything inside of Power BI desktop, you should be fine. There are, I believe, I want to say maybe this was fixed, but the last time I heard there's some issues, like if you use Analyze in Excel, you're going to have some problems. And also Q&A may have some issues with it as well. Those are the two that I'm aware of. So yeah, as with all things, test. So if you're looking to take advantage of Analyze in Excel and Q&A, I know there's been updates to Q&A, so try it, see if you're hitting any problems with it. And then otherwise, go forth. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Patrick?
No, you hit, that's the two main points. You hit them.
Yeah. Now, there may be other problems, but those are the ones that I'm aware of. So yeah.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah. All right. So Andre's got a question for us. How do you send parameters to a store procedure from Power BI service? So when we talk about parameters, I'm going to assume we mean Power BI reports and not paginated reports. So when we have parameters inside of a Power BI report, that's from the Power Query side of it. And so this is in the context of refresh or processing, right? So it's not an end user parameter. This is a report, a data set, something to populate the data set. And that's a one-time thing. So it's not going to be for every user down the line. But you can use parameters in Power Query. So a lot of times I've seen people use that for like server, database name. But you can use it as a parameter that you can populate into, like if you want to call store procedure for a SQL perspective. Do you have something ready to go, Patrick, or I can show something?
So, yeah, I have a parameter already, a store procedure already created.
Go over to yours
in our AdventureWorks database.
Yep.
And so I have this store procedure right here, right? And so I think it says single year. So I'm guessing if I pass a single year here, that the store procedure will give me some data, but doesn't look like it.
That's fine. I mean, we can.
Yeah, but anyway,
Can
right?
fake
So
it
you have
to
the
show
store
it doesn't have to
procedure.
actually work.
Yeah.
It's demo. It's the demo thing, right? It doesn't have to actually work. It's fine.
But right here, right? So you can take this, and then we can go over to the desktop and do some get data. This is all import. Yeah, this is great. This is all import. So store procedures and direct query. Should we always do it, Adam?
No. So store procedures
And direct query.
yeah, don't do it for direct query. It'll be you will get a glorious error if you try and do that in direct query. It will be amazing.
So, right, and so you could do this, and then we could parameterize this part in the query editor. Right?
But so you'd want to do exec in front of it, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you. And so I think all my names are the same here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure the database name. Yep. And so if I click OK, right, I won't get any data, but any valid SQL statement will run here. And then what I can do, I can go over into no data, but I can go over into the query editor, and I can parameterize this. If I make that parameter a text value, I believe it's in the service to interact with those. They have to be text, right?
I believe so.
And
Yep.
then, and so I can come here and go, where's my parameters? I can go here and add this. I should have opened up a new desktop, but that's all right.
That's all right.
I go here and I call it year, and then I put a value in 2019 and make this text, right? And then I'll have to do some things.
Yep.
So I can go right there and do this, and then I'll go into the advanced editor and I can replace 2019. Right? And I'll have to do some concatenations and all that kind of stuff, but just for the sake of brevity, I could do that, right, Adam? And then replace this. I forgot what I call that parameter.
Here.
Why is my IntelliSense kicking in?
Probably
All right,
because
and so I
here
can
may
do
be a
that.
reserved word.
Yeah, probably. But
Yeah.
that's what Patrick does. And so, it's already. But you can do that. And then when you publish this up, if it's set to text, you can go in your data set, refresh and you'll see that parameter there.
Right.
You can update it. But
Yes.
like Adam said,
Yeah, if you're doing import, that's cool.
Yeah.
It should work. But if you're doing direct query, you'll get that glorious error. It'll be a SQL syntax error. So
yep.
yes.
Anyway, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
So which leads to, there was another question that was out there. Shoot. No, I queued it up. It was out there because here it is. So this leads, doing the stored procedure. So effectively you're saying you want to use native query from a SQL perspective. And
boy.
Vivesh had a question here which ties directly into this, is so if we do native query, does that carry over query folding? And so the minute you do a native query, nothing's going to be folded back into that. So you've broke query folding. Anything you do after that point is not going to be folded back. So it's going to be processed on the Power BI or the gateway side or whatever. So if you are going to do like this stored procedure and you want to use that from an imported perspective, make sure it's going to cover all of your transformations or as much as possible before you continue. Otherwise, that's going to cause some perf issues. Yep. And so, just be careful with native query. So I remember there was one customer I was working with where we went in and they were having performance issues on refresh and everything else. And we went in and I looked at one of them and I'm like, this one's using native query. And they're like, oh. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, we're using that for all of our Power BI desktop files. I'm like, oh, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. So the other thing too is if you want to use incremental refresh, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Ouch. Don't do that. Ouch.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go. Had a question here. Can we have two admins managing one data set and gateway? It's kind of a complex question. So you can have multiple admins on the gateway. So it's easy enough to just add another admin to that. And then whoever's the admins are there, they can manage the data sources on that gateway. So that's fine. In terms of an admin of a data set, there's no real concept of that. There's an owner of a data set in a workspace, and there can only be one owner of a given data set. And so you could take over ownership of that data set. But yeah, no. So gateways can have multiple admins. Absolutely. Good question. Let's see here.
Questions.
Yeah. So Christian had one. Do we know when the DA 100 exam will be out of beta? No idea. So I don't know. Stay tuned. So let's see here. What else we got here? Go back quick. I saw a couple more. We'll get these queued up. And all right, let's see. Axel's got a question here. Whenever I perform a pivot in Power Query, it seems that query folding no longer works. View native query options grayed out after applying the steps. Source is SQL Server. So with that, don't go by just the point of view native queries grayed out. That's not an indicator whether query folding is occurring or not. And Patrick, I think you did a video on this.
I did. Use the query diagnostics tool.
Yeah, so you can do query diagnostics, or if like your source is SQL, you can even get a profiler trace in SQL and check the T-SQL statement that's being sent to see if query folding is actually taking place, because the view native query thing, that can be misleading. So don't necessarily go by that. If so, now on the chance that, hey, it actually is breaking query folding for whatever piece of operation that you're doing in Power Query, I mean, it's not getting folded. And so if it doesn't work, it's not going to fold. It's not going to fold. Sometimes I've also seen though, when I'm doing certain operations in Power Query, sometimes the order of those operations matter. And so you may want to play around with maybe doing something before or after that and see if that kicks it in, or if something else is killing it. So just be aware of that. So good question.
Yeah, good question.
All right, let's see here. Got a whole bunch of.
Because pivot should work. I can't see why. Because there's pivot and unpivot.
I want to say it does work.
I'm gonna have to look at that.
All right, let's go in. So Kim's got a question here. Pros and cons of using one model versus multiple. Oh, that's all, Patrick.
Ooh.
Data silos.
But sometimes there's a need for two models. If I have a single model that answers all the questions of all the reports and all the dashboards, that I build, it's great to have a single model. But sometimes there's different questions that you're trying to answer that requires a completely different data set. And there's never a reason to do any type of correlation or combination of those two data sets. Maybe you need two data sets. But if you have a model, and this is just, this is beyond Power BI, right? This is just designing my data warehouse or designing my data model. If I'm looking at, sales and quotas, they'll probably need to be in the same data set. But if I start looking at sales and maybe demographics, maybe I never relate those two. Maybe you need a different model. But as a rule of thumb that I try to use, I try to start out with a single data model. I always do. And I know there's a feature coming out, this composite model for live connections. I know that's coming out. But if you can stay with a single data model, try to stay with a single data model. Managing all different data models with the same type of data, you're creating this pocket of data silos, and then you have logic that you need to maintain across multiple data models, which can produce lots of inconsistencies and lots of problems. And so a single data model, one version of the truth, one, ring to rule them all, whatever you say, Adam.
One model to rule them all.
One model to rule them all. Go that route. When you start answering different questions of different things that can't be answered from that model, maybe it lends itself to a separate data model.
Yeah.
So anyway, we could talk about this for 2 days if you guys want to.
Oh, yeah.
I hope that answered your question, Kim. I hope that answered your question.
Yep. All right, cool. Moving on. So many questions. So let's do. I'm trying to find
golden data set. The golden data set.
There you go. All right. Let's grab this one. All right. So Jade's got a question here. Can you refresh a subset of tables during incremental refresh? One table needs a 12-hour update. The rest of the tables need 24-hour update. Nope. From the service perspective, there's no way to trigger an individual refresh. Now, one thing you could potentially do. So this is if you're using incremental refresh on a data set that's in a premium backed workspace, through the XMLA read-write endpoint, you could potentially trigger a refresh on the table. I haven't tried it, but I know from an XMLA standpoint that can be done. So that could be an option, but you'd have to wire that up yourself. You can't do it from a schedule refresh perspective.
But I'm wondering what is a 12-hour update? So update every 12 hours and then update.
So one table needs to be updated every 12 hours, and the other tables every 24 hours. So from the actual UI in Power BI, so whether that's schedule refresh or the refresh now button, or even if you trigger the refresh from like the API for the REST API through like a Power Automate or something like that, it'll refresh. You can't single out a single table. But from an XMLA endpoint, you could potentially do that. But again, you've got to, you got to wire all that up though. Yeah. All right. All right. Let's see. Sunil's got a question here. Can we base incremental refresh on parameters like non-dates, for example? So using the incremental refresh feature inside of Power BI Desktop, no. It's only going to be based on dates. Going back to that XMLA read-write endpoint, now that write is there, if you decide to model your model in SQL Server Data Tools or Tabular Editor, things like that, you can take full advantage of all the partitioning capabilities of analysis services at that point, in which case you can do whatever you want.
You can get really cute. You can tinker with it.
You could tinker. Yeah, tinker's the word of the week.
It's so funny.
Oh, bother. All right. Let's see here. So Thomas had a question. Is data flows related to the person creating it? If they leave, what will happen? So data flows are in a workspace, right? So they're going to be in an app workspace, right? Not your My workspace. And so hopefully you have more than one person as a member of the app workspace. In which case, if the admins or whoever can end up taking ownership of that data flow. So that's not a real big concern, as long as you have people in the workspace that can take that control once that person leaves. So, yep. So the only issue you have, typically the issue there is someone leaves, is when people start publishing stuff to their My workspace and you use that from a production standpoint. Don't do that. Try and use an app workspace. So that way, if they do leave, you have other people that can go in. Also, if you find that maybe they were the only person in that workspace, from an app workspace perspective, your Power BI admin could go in and inject themselves as an admin of the workspace, and then they can go in and assign other people, and you can take care of it. So, good question. All right. Whew. Let's see here. Up some more.
So many questions.
So many questions. All right. So let's go with. What are we doing on time? We got 15 minutes. We're doing all right.
15 minutes.
All right. So Ashish says, how can I save KPI history of the KPIs calculated in Power BI to show evolution? Yeah. So this is the idea of like, can I get a snapshot in time of certain things? And from a straight Power BI report perspective, there's not an option for that. You would almost, what I've heard some people do is like they actually do this from a Power BI desktop perspective, and then hit the refresh and then save that off as a point in time. I've heard this request from other people as well, like wanting that capability. So if doing a snapshot type operation is what you're looking for with a Power BI report, then you should go ahead and go to ideas.powerbi.com and vote that up. It's not a capability today out of the box. So there's hacks you can do to get it. Like I said, copying off a Power BI desktop file just to preserve that, and or doing it from a data perspective and getting fancy.
Yeah, do it in the back end. Do it in the back end in your data repository, whatever it may be. That's what I would suggest if you're trying to track. If you're trying to keep history, that's something you do on the back end. Power BI just not right now.
Yep. And so, by the way, so Mark, thanks for the super emote from before. Sorry I didn't mention it before. Much appreciated. And then Lucas has got a super chat for us. Thank you so much. That is thinking about performance. What's the biggest difference between relationship and merge tables?
I know what he's talking about. We ran into this recently. Remember the project I was working on? Oh my god. So I was working on this project for the past 2 weeks, and we actually had to involve Chris Webb, our Power Query expert, and he and I went through it, and when they were doing lots of merges, and one of the merges they was doing was a full outer join merge, which just takes Power Query to its knees, man. It just slows things down. And Chris actually wrote a blog post, his latest blog post on cross join. I don't know his blog, but look up Chris Webb. He recently wrote a blog post on what he and I were doing. And the merge can it'll slow your refresh down. But once the data is loaded up, the merge it's done. It's just the effect is going to be, my refresh is going to get slower depending on how you set the merge up.
Right.
But if you can do a relationship, Power BI likes star schemas. So I will say this, if you can do a relationship and stay away from the merge for now. Chris is actually working on something to make this more performant. It depends. I hate to give you the consultant answer on this, but it depends on data volumes, data size, refresh frequencies, and things like that. But merge can definitely show your data refresh down.
Yep. And specifically, I don't know if you said it because I wasn't completely listening.
Of course you weren't.
Merge in Power Query, right?
Yeah, merge and Power Query.
Yeah, okay.
Merge and Power Query. Of course you are.
I'm trying to keep up with the chat.
But if you merge two tables, so if I have a large table with a lot of columns and I have another large table with a lot of columns, and I only need one column from one of those large tables, the merge could be beneficial because now I'm pulling less data into my model,
Right.
and it's reducing the size of my model. So there's so many different factors there. Test. Start with the relationship if you can. But if you're merging and bringing in less data, that may be something.
So and the one you were working on, all those merges, like this was a really small like CSV file you were doing on, and it took something. How long did it take to pull that in?
45 minutes.
And how many rows were in that
45.
CSV file?
300 and some thousand
That's
rows.
insane.
And then I did some data prep. I used ETL tool, did some data prep, and now it's like 30 seconds or 45 seconds to load.
Yes.
So
Of note, that was something that was handed to Patrick. That wasn't
Yes,
something Patrick
yes.
wrote.
yeah. I had to literally, I inherited it, and they had a data model that the data model had to stay exactly the same. And so I needed to produce the Power Queries. The Power Queries had to result in the exact same schema.
Yep.
And so I had to figure out a way to do that without using all those merges. And so I just used some ETL outside of Power Query to do it. Anyway.
All right. So Jacob, thank you for the super chat, and he had a question. What would cause the model view to be grayed out in Power BI Desktop if you have a live connection? That will cause that to be grayed out. So if you live connect to an analysis services model, or if you say, hey, I want to go get data from a Power BI data set, you will not see the model view inside of Power BI Desktop. One thing Christian showed at MBAS is once the updates for the composite pieces come in, when you can actually do like a data set or AS model combined with like an Excel import, then the data modeling model view will be available for that. So, but today it's not. So stay tuned. And the release notes have that set for September. So got a little bit of time. All right. Moving on here. Trying to figure out what.
So many questions.
There are so
man.
many questions.
I'm looking down at the chat.
Yeah, I know. All right. So Indu's got on any demo on handling
That's a good
different
question.
granularity, sales and targets
saw this.
by quarter.
I saw this, and so I'm guessing there's two separate tables, one at the sales and one at the quota or target level. And so I talked to Alberto about this. This was great. He and I had this conversation, and it's all about your dimensions and how you relate. And so if I have a quota or target table and I have a sales or transactional table, as long as you have a dimension that's relating, that sits between those two tables, just works. Because now I can bring in, let's say, product or salesperson, and then I can see their total sales and their salesperson's quota in the. You should have emailed this. I could have did the demo on this. I don't have time to build it right now, but you can have salesperson sit between the sales table and the quota table, and now I bring that salesperson in, and because the relationship exists between the two, they can actually be on the same axis or in the same table, and then I can start doing calculations across it. So maybe next time we do this, I'll show a demo on that. That's a really good one. That's a good one. That's a good question.
Yep. All right. Better Idea Group's got a question here. I am not clear on the current workflow for consuming CSV Excel files that are saved, updated in a business OneDrive folder. So this is like the SharePoint.
We have a video on that, right?
I thought we did.
We have a video on that one.
So you
But
need
the key is to go get the path. Go
get
ahead.
get the URL, right, and import it from that. So with like business, if you have OneDrive or something and you're syncing to your hard drive, that's going to be difficult. Whereas if you get it from the web URL, then you can avoid having a gateway, and that should just work. Also, if so just focus on the web URL and then get it that way. And sometimes what I've seen, so you can just actually pull it as a get data web source, put in that URL, and then it'll figure out like if it's an Excel or CSV and wrap that, and then you can go and do whatever magic you want to do with it. All right, let's see here. We still got time here. All right.
Two other demos we could have shown.
Yeah. So Warren got a question. How do your coloring and data modeling in Power BI Desktop? I'm not sure I understand
Coloring
data model.
I think, and so in Christian's embeds,
Yeah.
he had
Yep.
the colors. Yeah, and so you gotta wait.
That's
It's gotta be.
That's an early preview of that composite feature update that's coming in September. And so who knows if that's what it'll be when it lands. Because that was a very, very early build of that. So hopefully that's what
But it
you
was
were asking.
nice though.
It was really nice. I
'cause
liked
was
it.
Really letting you know where the data
you could
came
tell.
from a
Yep.
coloring perspective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see here. Valent had one hack for larger Excel export. Paginator reports.
Yeah.
Paginator reports. I got a video on that. Paginator reports, or like, so the other thing though, when people ask for that, my first question that I challenge them with is, why doesn't analyze in Excel work for you in that scenario? So like, what's the goal of exporting that data? I get, people say, well, people want to work on it in Excel. Analyze in Excel lets you do that, and you've got the full data model at your, at your capability to use inside of Excel. So I would look at that. The other thing that really, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say the thing that frustrates me a lot though is when you're importing data from Excel and then people want to export it back out, and it's like, really? Okay.
I made some auditors angry earlier this week because it's like, well, they just want to get it they wanted to get it in Excel because that's the tool they know. I go, well, then don't use Power BI, use Excel.
Yeah.
I'm just saying why.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry. I don't care.
Yeah. Let's see here. Jade's got a question here. Can you have a date table that handles date time? Example, leadership wants breakdown of sales by time of day and hour. So what I would recommend, have your time as its own table and then have date as its table. In terms of marking a table as a date table, that has to be an actual date table. So your timetables, So hopefully on your timetable also, you'll have a main date key that you're going off of. So yes, I would just split up the time from the date because of the granularity of how big that will make your actual date table if you did that. So, but yeah, you can do that. And also I think this was the April release, there's the new relative time slicer in addition to the relative date slicer. So, yep. So, yep. All right.
Wow, and these are good questions this week too.
I know.
I just want to take a lot of these questions and do a couple of videos on them.
Yeah. You're not writing anything on your whiteboard either.
I moved the whiteboard. Notice you don't see it in the shot anymore. The whiteboard is dead to me. It's dead to me.
Oh. Let's see. Andy's got one. What's the state of AutoML tool in Power BI service? I was trying to get results with data from an Oracle database, and it is not so auto as it should be. Is this in the beta phase? So the AutoML, so that's done. If you're doing it from Power Query inside of Power BI Desktop, there's specific things that you can do. If you're actually having an issue with Oracle, I'm not aware of any limitations there. I don't know if folks in the chat know. I would think it would work. I don't know why it wouldn't. I don't know. So yeah, it should. Just trying to think on top of my head if there's anything else there. Can't. Maybe open a support ticket if there's not a specific limitation on that. That support may be the right way to go. I'm not aware of anything of why it wouldn't work with Oracle. So, and I also don't know specifically like what it is you're trying to do. So that's hard to ask. Scott Powell's got one here. Will there be support for query folding on native query in the future? Other tools do this. Hope. Wait, what? Query folding on native.
Yeah.
Well, so other tools aren't using Power Query, so this concept of query folding in Power Query is not what other tools are doing. My guess is no, because the problem here is that when you're using native query, you're specifying your own T-SQL statement. And so how do we merge that back in? How do we know where to put that into the SQL statement that you've handcrafted? Because you've told us where you've told Power BI, this is the query you should use when hitting my database. And so we're not going to fold back into that as part of it, right? So yeah, when you say other tools do that, their architecture and how they're handling data is going to be different from how Power BI is doing it. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. Let's see. One more. We got one more.
Yeah,
All right. Just gonna pick this one. I guess does append query on multiple tables in Power Query refresh parent query in parallel or sequential?
You can control, I don't know how it actually does that process, but you can control whether or not parallel queries happen or not in the options of the query edits in the Power BI desktop. So
a great thing that you can do. So things like that, if I don't know off the top of my head, so we would go try it and see what it does.
Yeah.
And for that, query diagnostics would be a great way for you to kind of also see like what's actually happening. So that's something that you can go try out. So, all right, folks. Sorry, there were a ton of questions as usual. So we definitely appreciate everyone hanging out with us, but we are at time. And so we are going to go probably record more videos today and edit a bunch of stuff for next week. So appreciate everyone hanging out with us on this Saturday. We love you guys and keep being awesome. See you next week.
See you next week.